Okay, well, cool. Thank you guys. That was very, very interesting. I will be interested to see if, well, I won't know, but I bet some of you will probably have your genomes scanned at the very least in the coming years. And you know, it's something to think about. You know, like what you're going to do with that information. So, okay, do you guys all remember and have this document that we began last time? And I think we, if memory serves me, and it often doesn't, but if it does, we started off discussing some of Mendel's experiments, looking into the nature of inheritance of certain traits in pea plants, and I sort of set up the stage for how we're going to go about approaching Mendel's experiments. Think about them in the context of the science of the times that he did them, and then apply kind of a modern terminology to it. And so we started going through at least a couple of the topics on this list that we have, and I think I asked you guys to look through the list and sort of acquaint yourself with some of these terms in preparation for today. So, as you remember from last time, Mendel worked on the mighty pea plant, and the pea plant, for reasons we talked about, was a good organism to study. Potential for multiple generations, lots and lots of different traits that had already been selected for because people had bred them into existence once a mutation arose, because humans like diversity. And people had characterized, to some extent, some elements of the relationship between these traits. You know, like they knew that when you cross purple to white, you get purple, and when you cross those purples together, you get a mixture of purple and white. And so there was already sort of a general understanding of this, for some people, we're starting to get a glimpse into the patterns by which these traits can be passed down. Now, what Mendel did that was different than what other people had done, and I think I gave you guys the definitions for the P or parental generation, where you might be crossing purple to white, the F1 generation, which would be all purple, and then the F2 generation, which is going to be a mix of purple and white. We did go through that, right? Yes. That's hard for me to remember. So what Mendel did that was different is this stuff had been done, but when he did crosses, he kept very detailed and careful records and did many, many, many crosses and counted the exact numbers of all the types of offspring that came out of the cross. And so when he did these crosses between, say, purple and white and got all purple, and then crossed the purple generation together, the F1s to get the F2s, and got this mixture of purple and white, he ended up getting those were the numbers that he got from that cross. 700 purple, 224 white, roughly. That alone isn't really that interesting, right? I mean, there's not much we can necessarily do with data of the number of offspring from a single cross for a single trait, like flower color. But what he did is he did crosses between all of the other traits as well. So he crossed round to wrinkled and got all round, and crossed those rounds together. He crossed yellow to green and got all yellow and crossed those together, and did it for a series of different traits, and he got this data here. It's lots of work, lots of counting of pea plants, lots of planting of pea plants. And what's the general trend that we see for at least these 4 traits?
3 times.
What's that?
There's 3 times more.
There are 3 times more of the trait that is always present in the F1 generation than the trait that disappears for 1 generation, right? So if you look through, you've got roughly a 3-to-1 ratio. You have a 3-to-1 ratio, pretty close to a 3-to-1, and pretty close to a 3-to-1. So when you see that, when you start seeing numbers come out for these what appear to be totally unrelated traits, flower color and pea shape don't seem to be really fundamentally related traits, but you're seeing the same pattern of inheritance, that's when you think you might be onto something interesting, right? You're starting to peer into some of the nature by which these things are passed down. So the question then is, are all, a question, rephrase this. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick, so my brain is not functioning fully today, so you'll have to excuse me. I either have allergies or I'm sick, I can't tell which one. So if you look at a pea plant that's purple, do you know for certain if that purple pea plant is a true breeding purple pea plant or not? Just by looking at it?
No.
No.
You don't, right? So how do you figure that out? You might be able to breed it to something, or pea plants are cool because they can self-breed. They can self-pollinate themselves. And when that happens, you'll be able to tell something about, do they only make purple offspring? Do they make a mix of purple and white? Do they only make white offspring? So if you do that for these purple pea plants, they're always purple. If you self-pollinate them, they only make purple offspring. And the same holds true for these white true breeding pea plants. These purple, not true, right? If you breed them together or self-pollinate them, you get a mixture of purple and white. But in the F2 generation, are those pea plants true breeding or not true breeding?
Not true.
How do you know? I mean, by looking at them, do you know if this purple one is true breeding?
No.
Do you know if this white one is true breeding?
No.
Well, you would, but for other reasons. But yeah, you can then take this generation and self-pollinate it or cross it to something to figure out if it is true breeding or non-true breeding. And when you do that, what you discover is that what appears to be a 3-to-1 ratio of purple to white, this dominant type that's present in the F1 generation, it's actually a 1 to 2-to-1 ratio of true breeding purple. So if you cross true breeding purple to true breeding white, you get the F1s that are all purple. And we know they're not true breeding, because when you cross them together, we get a 3-to-1 ratio of purple to white. But if we look deeply into these populations of peas, we see that all the white ones, no matter what, breed true. The purple ones are a mixture of 1 part true breeding purple and 2 parts non-true breeding purple. Why is that? You guys know because you've already gone through meiosis, but why is that? You have the advantage of 150 years of genetic exploration that Mendel had no idea about. You already understand, actually, on the chromosomal level, what causes this pattern of a 1 to 2-to-1 ratio of true breeding purple to non-true to true breeding white.
It's the random assignment from one original gamete to 4 different ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Random assignment, and then it just makes it a 1 to 2-to-1. But you just don't know which one to switch.
Right, so when you go through meiosis, right, the pea plant, like us, is diploid. And so it's going to have, for every gene, it will have 2 versions of it. Or it'll have 2 copies. They may be identical, they may be different from each other. And so when it goes through meiosis, it doubles each of those, right? Using my finger example, you've got your 2 alleles for a given gene, you double them, and then you split them out into 4 cells. So no matter what you do, each individual always is going to produce 2 different genetic types of gametes.